Hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact Video Series. As we're fast approaching the Christmas season, I felt it was appropriate that we talk about one of the major department stores from the history of downtown Batavia, probably the most famous, CL Carr's. As many people in the past must have done their Christmas shopping there. I know I've heard many stories about it, even though I never had the pleasure myself. The history of CL Carr's department store actually goes all the way back to 1905 when Claude L. Carr arrived here in Batavia, where he began working for a dry goods store called Oliver and Milne. He managed their store at 107 Main Street, which was actually located inside the Dellinger Theater, and it was one of the two shops that was located there. Mr. Carr had accumulated enough wealth by 1915 that he actually offered to buy out the partners of Oliver and Milne and take it over as by himself. However, the other partners rejected this offer, so Mr. Carr set out on his own to create his own, bought out another store called A.T. Boyd's, which was another dry goods store, which was located at 101 Main Street, and then continued to grow his burgeoning empire. A few years later, he was actually able to buy out the whole building at 101 Main Street and rent space next door at 103 Main Street, starting to expand his own block of Main Street would be where CL Carr's would eventually grow from. Carr continued to add space and actually took over the space left by his former employers, Oliver and Milne, after they shut down, and even opened up a secondary store, more of a bargain store, called Carr's Dollar Store. Combined space of Carr's stores was between 101 and 103 Main Street, and during the 1920s, he actually set about to renovate the storefront and make it more recognizable and more enticing to customers walking down Batavia's Main Street. He rebuilt the first floor, which is actually where the dollar store moved into, and actually hired probably Batavia's most famous architect, Frank Homilus, to redesign the entire interior and then rebuild the top three floors and the basement into modern storefront space and to create a modern storefront on Main Street. This progress was almost stalled immediately after his neighbor, the Dellinger Theater, actually caught on fire, and it was very worrisome that the fire would spread to the next door buildings and take down CL Carr's. However, the sturdy structure resisted the flames and was able to only suffer minimal damage instead of being a total loss. In 1937, Carr expanded even further and bought two storefronts on Jackson Street, which were located behind his storefront, to expand even further, almost creating his own block of CL Carr's. In 1960, Claude's son Robert actually expanded back into the Dellinger Theater, which meant the CL Carr's department store stretched from 101 to 107 Main Street, taking up nearly a city block. It was at this time that they set about renovating and modernizing the storefront even further, and the eventual space was equivalent to 43,000 square feet. Those 43,000 square feet actually ran the equivalent of 4 floors, which had the basement and the first and second and third floors. So shopping at CL Carr's could be quite an adventure and across a pretty wide space. Now, Claude Carr actually died in 1947, and the business passed on to his widow and his sons. His son Robert took over the business and was in charge until 1985, when his son Stephen continued to operate the business. And it was Stephen who operated until 2001, when Carr's eventually closed. So Carr's had left an indelible mark on Batavia's history, and many people that live in Batavia today and the surrounding area still remember fondly of going shopping at Carr's and going to see all the wonderful things that were available there. Now, we do have several artifacts I'd like to show off real quickly, telling some of the story of Carr's. And the first is actually, we have a screen, changing screen that was painted by one of the workers at CL Carr's back in 1963, which shows all of the portraits of all the workers who were there at the time. So here we have all of the workers at CL Carr's back in March 2nd, 1963, and they were separated by the locations in which they worked. It was mostly women that worked there, but you did have the boys, as they were called, who did a lot of the other work, but you had the ladies working on all the different floors. And I'll point out specifically the third floor is that's where all the payments were done, as they had the pneumatic tubes that sent the cash or check or however payment up to the third floor where it was processed and sent back down. So he didn't actually even pay at the register at CL Cars. You might recognize some of the faces there, but this is actually on display at the museum, so feel free to come and check it out. Felt as we're getting close to the Christmas season, it'd be pretty cool to show off some of the Christmas catalogs from the 20s and 30s that we have from CL Cars. So here we have one of those car store magazines from Christmas of 1926. So as we flip through it, you can see that there's quite a lot of different things that were available at the time, and you can see all the wonderful fashions that were existing in 1926, including women's clothing, fabrics, and handkerchiefs. Everybody needs a good handkerchief or a very nice handbag. And can't forget to get to the children's section with all the cool toys and everything. Gives you a little insight into what Cars was selling in 1926 and what was really popular at the time. Well, I hope you enjoyed this latest video in our Artifact video series and got to walk down memory lane for some of you going back to CL Cars and learning something completely new for those who didn't have a chance to shop there themselves. So in case you've missed any of our previous videos, you can go back and check them out on our YouTube channel, Holland Land Office Museum. And it's in one playlist. You can go through every single one you like. And we're going to keep doing this in the future, so please stick around and join us for the next one.